Watcher Travelers, and welcome to another episode of Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin Lore Podcast. Last week, we went to Inazuma with Beefy from the Shade Chamber to discuss Kujo Sara. This week, the Tots are back to Sumeru to discuss Forest Watcher Tighnari.
Do you like to range forests? Like to know size? Like to Nari ties? Like to lightning strike? Like to mother children sprung on you by your husband? Well, then you might like our website, talesofteyvat.com, which features a page dedicated to this episode, Feeney's second favorite character.
Woo!
While you're on our site, check out our past episodes and seasons, artist spotlights from the community for every topic, and some other goodies.
And finally, feel free to email us at talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com to let us know what you think of this week's episode and what topics you'd like to see in the future. Additionally, you can feel free to follow us on Ko-fi, where you can buy us a cup of coffee /Diet Pepsi, or you can actually check out some of our Tales of Teyvat merch. We got some hoodies, shirts, stickers out. And if you have any suggestions for new merch, let us know. I'm thinking we have to start with the Tighnari merch now. All the Tighnari ears.
Just for you.
Just for me. But, so Tighnari, he is the first character really that we meet in Sumeru. He was on all of the leaks when we got like that original leaked photo of like the 5 characters standing next to one another. And he's kind of our guide to start the game. What were your thoughts when we first met Tighnari, or you first saw him? Like, what were first impressions?
The hair.
What about the hair?
It's so perfect. Like, it's just parted very correctly. It's very like flat ironed, you know, like it's just perfect. Like I feel like he went to a salon minutes before we see him every time we see him.
It's the perm. The permanent perm.
Yeah. I fell in love with his outfit. And I mean, I think one of the things that just happened in general when we went to Sumeru is it was just so many colors. Everything from the animals to the scenery, and then just to their clothes. I want to say that Sumeru was the first time that I was like, I'd wear that I would wear that. And I feel like his outfit is just gorgeous. I love the color combination. I love the details to it. So I totally loved him for, you know.
Well, he does have the best shoes in the game.
Yes, absolutely. I love his boots.
I thought his outfit was really chaotic at first, but it grew on me a lot. Like the color combination is so intense, and I was like overwhelmed by it at first, but over time I was like, this is like brilliant. Like all these colors actually really work well together, and I really like it.
He's very aesthetically pleasing to look at. Like the color combos, like you guys are saying, the accessories. He has a very detailed outfit too, and every piece of his outfit actually lends into his lore, which is fun too. You know, one thing that I think is really cool about Tighnari is that, you know, he has the one arm fully covered too, which is such a fun nod to the archer. A lot of the bow users in this game have that. But the arm that he uses the bow with, when he pulls back, you know, typically that arm can get scratched and like fucked up when you're a bow user. Not that I am. I just know these things.
Yeah, right. I know you're in your backyard practicing to be like Tighnari.
Yes, that's why my house has holes in it. But yeah, his outfit, the colors and everything, it's just so detailed, knowing that he's a healer of sorts, that he's kind of always got the bag of tricks on him. So he has his little bag. We know the back is a magnifying glass ornament from his mother.
Yeah, can we just talk on that for a moment, just with that mirror? That thing is, because it just looks like it's an ornament on him. But the fact that it's actually like a passed down heirloom as well, his clothes lend to his story so much. And that piece, I don't know, there's just something so sweet about it. The fact that it was his mom's, I don't know.
Yeah, it also worries me though, because he like that's the only time he talks about his mother, and so I'm kind of like, is your mom dead? But like, you know, what? He talks more about his father than his mother. You know, we know We'll
I'm
get
just
into his
thinking of
childhood.
people in the Discord being like, she said it. Take a shot.
I'm just saying it's a possibility. Also, a lot of people like the headcanon that the flower that he wears is a gift from Cyno, that he has also done something with, because you find out, Tighnari is very crafty, especially with flowers and different leaves and things like that. He'll tell you how to make a bookmark. He's actually done like this not weird, he did a project with the forest rangers where they were trying to like stop people from having rotting flowers everywhere. So he does know how to preserve flowers because he's made ornaments for people out of them. So I am curious if that's like a preserved gift from his husband. Who knows? But
Presumed husband.
no, husband. It's just husband. Listen,
I just put it out there that just to not confuse anybody.
Husband / brother.
No, stop. I hated that. Don't bring up the one weird thing they said in Windbloom. Everything else was great.
Yeah.
Listen, everyone agreed on the internet that was a translation issue and that they're just trying to say that they're a family.
Right.
So we're gonna ignore that.
Yeah.
For me with Tighnari, I remember liking the look, but for me, I gotta like talk to them before I decide anything. And I really liked the like subtle sass but caring. So it's like once you kind of got over like mother berating you for eating the mushroom, you then got like very well cared for and taught about it and checked in on. And I was like, oh, this is nice.
So Feeny, I know that you can Tighnari. When did that hit you? Like when were you like, this is me?
That's a great question. I think this is going to sound so stupid. So I played through the whole Archon. I knew I loved Tighnari, but I knew it wasn't like my love for Albedo, like it wasn't that type of love. I knew it was something different. And then Tiff and I are in a book club and we read this book series. Well, we read the first book and then I read the rest of the series called Wolf at Your Door. That's the first book. I forget what the rest are. They're by like Charlie something, and we could put it on the site maybe. We could put it on the site for anyone who's interested. But we read this book series and like long story short, it's like them trying to like bring werewolves into society, but it's basically a cop romance with werewolves. And the main two characters, it's not going to spoil anything because you get it from the back cover. They get together and it's Oliver Park and then Dayton Cooper. And I always get mixed up if it's Dayton Cooper or Cooper Dayton, but you get the point. They call him by both names. And Oliver is a werewolf. The other is not. He's a human. And I can always remember going to book club and everyone in our book club plays Genshin or knows Genshin enough to understand it. And I was like, yeah, like, I feel like I really identify with Dayton Cooper, Cooper Dayton. I was like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like I really identify with this guy. And I was like, had to give him my reasons why. And then after I read the second book, I remember texting Tiff and being like, oh my God. Because of course in the second book, their relationship is a little more defined. And I was like, their relationship reminds me of Tighnari and Cyno. And I was like, it makes so much sense that I like the two of them. And then Tiff actually was like, oh, that's so funny. Like you see yours, like who's who? And I was like, oh, well, Tighnari is Cooper Dayton, Dayton Cooper. And then Cyno is Oliver Park. And that's when it kind of like clicked in my head. I was like, oh, okay. Like you see yourself in Cooper Dayton, Dayton Cooper. So clearly,
I just want to let you keep saying it, but it's Cooper Dayton.
Cooper Dayton, thank you.
His name is Cooper.
His name is Cooper. I mean, Dayton is a name too. So I was not, it's been a
Oliver
while.
and Cooper.
Listen, I like this book series so much that I convinced our book club to go back to the book because one person in the book club didn't read the book. And now we're supposed to be reading the second book. I am hyped for when we read it because I'll reread it. Yeah. But yeah, it was honestly like this book. I guess maybe like, I don't know, Cooper seems more human than Tighnari. Maybe it's because, you get to make up the image in your head instead of having like an anime video game character in front of you. And I think that kind of helped put it into perspective, not the werewolves. But, for me with Tighnari, I just feel like he can be misread sometimes. And I feel like in real life, not on this podcast, like I get that vibe. Like, I think people might think I'm snarky or sassy or maybe cold because I'm straightforward. but I'm actually
Really?
yeah, it depends on the situation. I definitely have had my moments where I've let that shine through more than the warmer side of me, just because of like life circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like Tighnari in the fact that like I lead with the snark, Usually I care and then I'm like, you fucking dum dum. Then I call you a lummox after I'm sure you're okay. So I don't know. There's a lot with Tighnari that I relate back to, trying to help people, the way he does it, the way he looks at like academics. And also he knows what he wants. And I think it took him a little bit to figure that out. He's very curious. I don't know. We'll talk more about it. I have 9 pages of notes. So I'm ready.
Well, can we talk about one thing though that I think you were disappointed though with Tighnari?
The lightning strike?
Oh my God, we're gonna get to the lightning strike.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Listen, you said disappointed. I do have a list of issues.
What's the lightning strike? I don't think we ever talked about that before.
Brandon, if you were in front of me right now, arrow.
Excuse me, Tighnari Cooper.
Tighnari Cooper dated. Yes.
No, and you had a very good point about it, was the fact that he's not a healer, but he's really a healer.
Yeah, that always confused me. The same with Kale. And, we'll talk more about it as we get into, we're going to go through basically his life. We're going to open the scrapbook, the baby book to begin with in a second. We'll talk a little bit about him. But when we get into the chapters of his life where Kale is introduced, I think it is really disappointing because he's a botanist, even though he knows a ton of biology, it feels like, even though he says that he cannot fix brains. But like him and Kale, everyone always points out Kale has these little things that are like amber, but she also has these things that are very similar to Tighnari, and they're both bow users, so I guess it's easy to mix them up. But like,
he's her hero, I feel like, just like Amber.
Yeah, and her whole thing is she wants to be like a healer, like a medical person. She wants to do that. And I just think it was like a big misstep gameplay wise to not make him a healer.
Yeah, he should have at least been like a partial healer.
Right. Where maybe like his AoE does it or something like that. Like you don't have to do anything crazy, or he heals himself like Xingqiu or Kaya.
Right.
But also, I will say there's one other thing that disappoints me a little bit with the way they made Tighnari. And that's that they have written him as the Robin to Cyno's Batman, which is upsetting because, like I said, I have 9 pages worth of fucking notes on this guy. He's not just Robin. He deserves his own show.
It all depends on how you look at it, too. Some people would say that the backbone behind Batman isn't anything without Robin, Well,
I just more so mean that they don't give Tighnari as much of a spotlight in the game.
They don't make him like the leading man.
Yeah, where there are moments where like I feel like they should. Like I think even though it's Cyno's story quest and his second story quest with the Temple of Silence, like all I hear in my head when I think about that is the TikTok "I need a man" like sound. Because Tighnari is basically like, that is my husband. I'm going into the desert. You can't fucking stop me. Like, he is the main character while Cyno is MIA.
And we're going to learn all about Hermanubis and his race and everything.
Right. It's just, there's those moments like that where I'm like, you could have done more with him. And, we'll, like Brandon said, we'll talk more about, like, his species and everything like that, where you're kind of like, hello, like, this man has a lot more to give. So I do hope that they come back to it. We do know that they love Sumeru, and specifically they love the Sumeru 4, the 4 aggravate, as people call them, of Tighnari, Cyno, Kaveh, and Alhaitham. So I do hope we get to see more of him. I hope we get a second story quest. That being said, no one has a story quest when they're a baby. Unlike most characters in the game, Tighnari is not an orphan. I hope.
I know, non-orphan alert.
And for the most part, he had a pretty nice upraising. His mother is a paleontologist, and his father is an entomologist. And he's actually currently studying the evolution of beetles in the desert. Tighnari does not plan to join him.
Thank you.
He's like, Cyno can go study beetles with my father if he wants.
Like, I don't... It's just so alien to me, like wanting to study bugs because I hate them so much.
Yeah, me
But I
too.
appreciate it. Like I appreciate people that are nerdy about, nature. So I love that for him. I would never.
Yes,
Nerdy by nature is like naughty by nature.
no. Also, we have a few voice lines about Tighnari's dad. We also get to see a picture of his dad in Kave's hangout. So for those who don't remember, in Kave's hangout, one of the options you get is for Aggravate, the four of the Sumeru boys sitting together, and they find an old photo that is all of their fathers, presumably, sitting at a table almost in the same light. So it's Cyrus, Al-Haytham's father, Kave's father, and then Tighnari's father. And Tighnari's father has ears. So we could assume that he gets the ears from his father.
And his mama was into foxes.
So Tighnari, besides having two parents, from what we know, he was like the most curious kid on the face of the planet. Other kids were reading, he was going through his parents' shit, trying to learn. And he also liked to like hug his tail. So like he'd be like reading and hugging his tail and like I'm like, that's so fucking cute.
That is really cute. And I think that's when you realize that you kin him.
Oh, because I was like, if I had a tail,
You would be hugging your tail all the time. I know you would.
I do hug like a little like mini version of a body pillow at night. So it's possible. Or
you
something.
hug your own hands. Like you hold your hand. Like you're like holding your own hand. It's very Tighnari of you.
Brandon is calling me out for mannerisms I didn't even realize were a thing. I do that. I do hold my hands all the time. I'm doing it right now. Anyway, my hands are now in my pockets. So as a young kid, though, Tighnari had a lot of questions about his heritage and like why he had ears and why no one else did. He didn't really seem to know a lot about it. And so his father decided to tell him about being a Tighnarian, a Valuka Shuna, a fennec fox, so to speak. And so we're not going to go too much detail about what the Tighnarians and everything are. We'll give you a basic overview. If you're more interested in learning, you can go listen to one of our like 9,000 desert episodes. I think our one on the Temple of Silence, which is really like a extension of Cyno's story, might do you well as well. But
that's where we actually learn a lot about Tynar and the Tighnarians.
Yes. So way back when there was a town called Tynar. No one knows where the heck that was, but it was out in the desert. And the Tighnarians were a fox-like species, and they escaped Tynar, whatever, Tignar, and they went to Tulaytullah, our Emerald City, and they followed Herbanubis, who was one of them. And we know Hermanubis is the guy's spirit that lives inside of Cyno. So full circle, man.
How do you feel about some other man living inside your man?
But it's like my ancestor lives inside my man.
You gotta pay my OnlyFans for that.
So then eventually, things don't go great in the desert. Deshret dies. Herbanubis and his folks discover the Temple of Silence. There's a whole lot of jazz going on there. But at one point, the Tighnarians decide that they're going to move out of the desert and they're going to move into the forest. So they move over into the rainforest where we currently know Tighnari vibes and hangs out. And when they got there, the Aranara called them Valuka Shuna, which means like big dog.
Big desert dog.
also, just to rewind slightly, I didn't know until looking into this episode that the Tighnarian race, they were allegedly saved by the Dendro Archon back when all the war was happening in the desert and all the Deshret stuff was happening. And that's what turned their fur green.
Yeah.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
It's pretty cool. It's a little confusing though, like when the saving happened,
Yeah, it's not clear.
Because they make sure that we know that Tighnari has a darker tail or a lighter. Tighnari's tail color being darker makes him not bode as well in the heat. But there were Tighnarians with lighter green tails and furs. And the lighter your tail or the lighter your fur, the better you did in the heat. So it's were they saved before the Temple of Silence happened?
I think so. Well, I don't know. I know that going back to our Temple of Silence episode, Hermanubis, basically all of these people turned on the Tighnarian priests and Hermanubis because they were scared of them, even though they saved them. And that's when he broke himself into pieces, which is like a big part of the Cyno story quest part 2. And they were fighting with the tyrant king of Gurabad during that time. So I'm assuming that the Dendro Archon saved them during that and helped them escape to the rainforest, but I don't know for sure.
So we're not 100% certain what's going on with the timeline, but we do know that Rukkhadevata swooped in, gave them a save.
Yeah. And turned them for green.
Yeah, I wonder what color they were beforehand. I mean, I guess with Hermanubis, he kind of looks like brown and orange, like a regular fox.
Yeah, but they said that most of them were they had lighter fur, right? A lighter shade.
That's true.
But the way that Tighnari's father talks about it makes it seem like it's also just a genetic trait that Tighnari's fur was so dark green. Because remember, he has some line where he's like, oh, he's definitely going to hate the heat.
Yeah. So after the saving, the Tighnarians come to the forest and they meet the Aranara, and the Aranara give them the name of Valuka Shuna, the big dog, right? Which doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? We're all kind of like, what the fuck?
Well,
they're foxes.
If it was the Aranara,
it checks out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the things is people are kind of based off of their memories and everything. People say it's not that big of a deal, but they also think the Aranara could have just been oh, Grandoir, they have ears like a dog, therefore they're a dog.
Yeah, they're airheads.
They're airheads. I know, they're so cute though.
I know, I love them, but they're airheads. Total bimbos.
Huh.
And then in
an Armani a bimbo.
I stand by it.
So then there is some question about how Tighnari is. In his character story, he does mention that he's had ancestors who lived alongside Valuka Shuna, and therefore he has inherited some of the traits. And his father says something similar, where he says, according to a human friend of mine who has a very close connection with the forest, it was a little creature known as the Aranara that gave us this name. So it's almost like the dad is suggesting that the dad is Tighnarian, but then Tighnari is suggesting that he is actually more human than Tighnarian. So it's a little confusing. There's a 50-50 here. I think we got to meet the parents. But
also maybe I wonder if the Aranara naming them is tied into Rukkhadevata saving them. Which,
yeah.
Because she's like, oh, guess what? I just made this forest and this whole little airhead race. So why don't y'all go over there and get away from these people in the desert that are trying to kill you?
Come hang out with my army of bimbos. We will make it work for you.
You'll be safe.
So back to Tighnari as a kid. So he's a kid. His dad tells us all about this heritage, and Tighnari was like, well, I know what I need to do. So little 8-year-old fox boy is I need to go see the desert father. I need to see where my people are from. And the dad's like, okay. I guess Brandon said he knew he wasn't going to do well in the heat. And almost as immediately as they set foot in the desert, he fainted of a heat stroke. And he became very disappointed in himself. And he blames evolution. He's like, look at what evolution has done to the great dog species.
He's like, I didn't believe 23andMe, and I should have.
I should have known. So he decides he's not really going to be a desert person after that. But he is very interested. He's very curious. He's always trying to learn. He was always looking at leaves very specifically. And so that's when his mother gifted him the magnifying glass that he currently has on his back.
So I thought that it was a functional magnifying glass at first, but then I realized later that it was one, but that he fashioned it into an ornament.
Yeah, like I think when his mother gifted it to him, it was definitely like working and functional. But
Oh
for
yeah,
a
yeah.
kid too,
He
like
used it like all the time in the forest. He was like,
probably burned it out.
let me look at these mushrooms. That would be a good one to take.
Now,
I could get really dreamy with this one.
oh yeah, because we know that Tighnari likes to get high on mushrooms. He says it's for science, but I think he just wants to trip balls.
Yeah, he likes his hallucinogens.
Oh,
for sure.
And if you don't believe us, just watch his character teaser, where he literally eats a mushroom and drops balls for science. But
Drops ball.
Is that not what you say?
Trips balls. He drops balls.
Oh my god. Anyway, you want to go see him trip? Go do it. Anyway, so baby Tighnari gets his magnifying glass, and he really helps him in his exploration. And the other thing about child Tighnari to know is that he actually dreamed a lot. And one thing we know is that the Akasha terminal system, which is the little earpiece that they wear, took away their dreams. So I don't know if, Tighnari would have still been a dreamer if it wasn't for the Akasha, or if the Aranara had something to do with it, living in the forest, giving him all these beautiful dreams. But he really misses them, and he asks if we have dreams. So I hope that he gets dreams one day again.
Aw.
Yeah, it's kind of sad because, so when Tighnari goes into the Akademiya, he gets accepted really early on, and he goes into Emerda to study botany. And it's actually noted that he was against the implications of the Akasha terminal. So when Tighnari first entered the Akademiya, which we can assume is in the last 10 years in Teyvat?
Yeah.
That the Akasha system wasn't in place yet, or at least wasn't being used nationwide yet. Because we do know Tighnari only wears it when he's in the city anyway. He doesn't really wear it as much when he's out and about. And basically, he was super against it because he felt like people who searched for knowledge should want to have that knowledge and they should want to savor it. But he felt like using the Akasha terminal, people were looking at knowledge as just a tool to get by. Oh, I don't know that. That's fine. I'll get the knowledge to do it. And he just didn't think that was right. He thought that if you were going to be studying, that it should be a passion of yours. You shouldn't just be going to school because you can. He was you should go to school because you want to, and it's what you enjoy. Which, is good on Tighnari because he lives in an academic culture.
But it's also maybe part of why he removed himself from that environment.
Absolutely.
For sure, yeah.
And went back to nature. He's also, I love that he's the OG anti-AI person.
Yeah.
He is. He's anti the academic lifestyle too, which we've talked about in the past when talking about Sumeru and the Archon line and how the academic world is so crazy.
It's a circle jerk.
Yeah. And a lot of characters, especially Cyno, make note that he is not a normal academic either, which is always nice.
Didn't Cyno kind of fall in love with Tighnari because he was Tighnari got his attention after he went to the forest, and all the forest rangers were like, oh, he's our leader. We love him. And then Cyno's wait, there's all these people gathering around this one person that might lead to academic corruption. I need to look into this. And then he actually did his research and found out, oh no, he's just a lovely person actually. And then he was kind of hearts and eyes.
So that actually happened while they were in school, before Tighnari even went to the Forest Rangers. And, he was young. He was this young kid who was, they make it sound like he started school a year early type of thing. He was very smart, but he was the species that was meant, people knew Tighnarians and Valuka Shuna were supposed to be loners. So he did all of a sudden start to get a lot of attention from people. He had a really good reputation because he was good at helping. So people would always want to study with him, have them in their groups, because, they knew Tighnari wasn't going to hand them the answer, but they knew that he would help them. And people would fight over him. So Cyno, who was not 100% clear if he was a Matra or the General Mahamatra yet, got word of this because Tighnari, unlike what I said in our Kaveh episode, Tighnari is younger than Cyno. I did flub that up. We find out in Windbloom that Tighnari is the younger of the two. So, Cyno might have graduated already while he was still in school. Cyno actually stalked him, pretty much. And he said it was his job. He was like, I need to stalk him because he could be Fatui. He could be the Fatui. He could be doing academic corruption. And in the end, he did judge that this is an upright and reliable talent who has no questionable dealings. And then they became friends. I will say, though, quote unquote, it is a little confusing, though, because we learn a lot in Cyno's second story quest that they went to school together because Cyno used to take Tighnari up onto that tree branch in Sumeru City to study. And they have that whole silly story about how Cyno almost dropped an apple, and if he had dropped the apple it would have hurt someone.
It was very romantic.
So romantic. So it makes me wonder if you could be a Matra but still be in school. But yeah, so like Brandon was saying, Cyno, researched into Tighnari, and then the two ended up becoming besties, which is also funny. Besties though, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when Tighnari joined the Akademiya, like I mentioned, he was accepted early into Amurta. He studied botany, and he actually got to work directly under the sage, which is Nafis. I love Nafis. I love that man. He is so sassy.
Those glasses.
The glasses are better than Dory's.
Iconic.
He looks so much like a crazy John Lennon.
He fits the role of crazy scientist,
Yeah.
But he has a pretty good head on his shoulders. And Nafis actually is a huge reason that the Archon quest even really kicks off in Sumeru. But we'll hold up because we're not there yet. So he ends up getting to work directly under Nafis, directly under the Sage, which kind of is unheard of. We haven't heard of any of our other Sumeru characters necessarily working directly with the Sage, although they do all have their mentors. We've met everyone's mentor except for Al-Haytham's.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
Did he even have one?
And maybe it was his grandma, R.I.P.
Yeah.
Sad. Because we know Kaveh and Cynos are the tomato fiends. And then Tighnari's is Nafis, who kind of walks in and is like, stop arguing over tomatoes. I will just make more. It's weird that the botanist isn't involved in the tomato growing competition. Maybe he's not allowed.
Yeah.
They banned him.
They're like, you know too much.
They're like, this is your literal career. Back up.
They're like, no GMOs.
Nafis is like, I only have GMOs. He's like, what about your pesticides? But
yeah.
So, as I believe Brandon was saying earlier, with this whole academic issues that Tighnari has, he's not into the academic lifestyle. He does not agree with what higher people in academia life are doing. So when he graduates from the Akademiya, he decides he's going back to his roots. And he's going back to the forest, where he's going to be a forest ranger. And that was a lot harder than he thought, because the forest rangers who were in charge, they really just saw everything at the big picture, but they weren't looking at the little pieces that made the big picture happen. And so Tighnari came in, and he was the one who was like, all right, we need a patrol log. Everyone needs to have their chores list. What the heck are we doing? He was the one who was like, where is the training? And he really started to, kick the butts of the forest rangers and put them in the tip-top shape to actually help adventurers, travelers, and merchants alike.
Yeah, he was very organized.
Yeah. And he's known to be stern. The order is he's known to be professional, stern, and then sweet. So he saves your life, then he yells at you for not listening and getting into danger, and then he helps fix you up. Yeah. That is the Tighnari way.
This is also the time when they start calling him the General Watch Leader. And he was just like, yeah, no, I don't like that. That's too big of a title for me. And it did sound too much like the General Mahamatra to him. And he preferred Mr. Master and Mr. Tighnari.
He is an independent woman. He's like, don't liken me to my man like that. Like, I'm my own person. Oh. Also, his jokes are so bad. I don't want anyone thinking I'm like him.
Yeah. That's the real reason. He's like, that name's too close. I'm going to start saying dad jokes. Yeah. I want you to know, too, I held back he was, investigating his roots back in the forest. I was like, oh, it's right there. It's right there. No, let it go. But I had to still say it. I had to get it out. I feel better now.
I think he's onto something because Tiff, I mean, you've definitely been poisoned by the Cyno jokes.
I have.
Maybe Tighnari will have the cure for that. I can only hope. But Tighnari is really loved by the other forest rangers. They laugh about him. They know that he scolds people, and they think it's funny when he scolds like the travelers. And he makes he actually does a lot of lectures about wilderness survival, and he will try to teach people, and he has like a field guide as well. And he's willing to, eat mushrooms so that he can tell people whether or not they're good or bad, but he really likes mushrooms. So
he gives like hippie mom.
Yeah, but not like the granola mom, not like Veery.
No, like, but hippie, like,
yeah,
back to nature, hallucinogens, but like also like deep caretaker vibes. Like, I will take care of everything. I'll handle it. I will protect you. Like, just very motherly.
Yeah. He also seems to know how to have fun, even though he doesn't have it a lot. And I'll talk about that more with like Kaveh later. But one of the things that the Forest Watchers have done since Tighnari has taken over is they worked with a bunch of flower vendors because they found that people were wasting this like really pretty flower. And once it was picked, it would only last for like a day or two. And then it would die and people would just like throw it. And then it'd be rotting, it'd be gross, it wouldn't be properly composting, all the things that I worry about when I get flowers from someone. And they went up to the flower vendors and they were like, listen, we want to work with you. So we'll help you find all the flowers. But when people come over to buy the flowers from you got to give them this receipt. And this receipt basically says that when the flowers wilt, they can bring them back to you, and the forest rangers will make like a really pretty art piece with the flower, and then they can pick it up. And they could split the proceeds between the vendors and the forest watchers. And they did. And people actually really liked it, and they solved this whole fucking problem of the dead flowers, and which is just like so random.
Yeah. It's weird to say, bring back a flower to me and I'll fix it on up for you.
Yeah, right?
It's just an odd concept. Although I guess like people take like flowers and preserve them and put them in shadow boxes and stuff.
Right. It also was interesting because like when he decided to do that, the forest rangers kind of were like, why don't we just tell them they can't pick the flower?
Yeah.
And Tighnari was like, yeah, you tell people not to pick it, they're just gonna pick it more. So, and he actually like compares it to like a very bad lecturer. And it makes me feel like that was him being like, Akademiya scarred me for life and I will never be like them. Except for my master. Cause that's like, they call like their mentors masters here.
Yeah.
Also, I like to play with flowers because I'm gay.
I mean, he loves them. He's got them on his body. Adi. Also important to know, we kind of mentioned this earlier, but when Tighnari got accepted into the Akademiya, that's actually when he made the magnifying glass from his mother into an ornament. Just because by then it became like really old. So just talk about his accessories. We throw that in there. So then he's a forest watcher and he's like running the Avidia forest. He's living in Gandharvaville. He's friends with Cyno. When one of the first times we hear about Tighnari, it's actually from a note that Cyno left where he like gifted him some sort of nut. Typical things.
But no comment.
Mm-hmm. Lips are sealed on that one.
So while Tighnari is out, doing his thing in the forest, Cyno is being the General Mahamatra. And he gets summoned to Mondstadt by Lisa. And this is when the manga storyline of Kale having the black fire magic within her, being experimented on by Dottore and his fiends all come into play. We have an episode on the manga if you'd like a deeper dive into that. When all is said and done and the power has been sealed within Kale, Lisa and Cyno and Jean, they decide this Kale should go back with Cyno to Sumeru. And that's where Kale is originally from. And Cyno says, basically, not to fear, because I know the perfect person. And he brings Kale to go live with Tighnari. And I think this is the part where the relationship between Cyno and Tighnari stepped up from like serious dating to married, because now they had a kid together.
Whether Tighnari likes it or not.
Yeah, basically.
It's like, here's this kid. Go raise her.
Yeah, I'll be off doing cop things.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah. And, great point, because there's definitely parts where Cyno asks about Kale, and Tighnari's like, she's gotten taller. You should come visit. I'm like, how long has it been? You two are married. Why isn't he visiting?
Commitment
But
phobe.
yeah, he's like, I'm just going to go be barefoot in the desert instead, where you can't go because I know you don't bode well there.
Yeah, you're somehow seemingly pulling apart their relationship right now, making it a little less
It's
possible.
romantic because Cyno
It's
is
romantic because they don't see each other?
because they're like star-crossed lovers.
Do you
Listen.
think Kale's shoe choice is influenced by Cyno's bare feet?
What, does she have sandals
I
on?
gotta go look at her feet.
I know, I'm
Yeah.
literally like,
She has like open-toed.
Yeah, I mean, she's got a mixture of her three influences on her feet of Tighnari and Amber with their boots and then toes. Toes.
Them desert
It's like a peep
toes.
toe.
I know you said Tighnari's shoes are the best, but I'd wear her shoes if they were like ankle boots, not the rest of it. Anywho.
I just think it's interesting because Tighnari is like Doc Martens, like boots, and Kale wants to be Tighnari so bad, but then she has these like open-toed shoes.
Well, she's
But the
still a girl.
I would say the shape of her shoes reflects Amber's shape just with the toes out. That could just be like a desert thing too. I mean, we know when we first meet Kale in Sumeru, she is still affected by her Elazar, and therefore really isn't able to do as much as she would like. So she might not need to have Doc Martens at first, where Tighnari needs to be like full covered, even though he's showing like a little bit of like his calf. He, wants his toes covered. He's probably got steel-toed boots. Kale didn't need that. Maybe she'll get a skin with steel-toed boots. I don't know.
That would be so cute, honestly.
It would be really cute if they gave her like a specific Forest Watcher outfit that like matched Tighnari really closely. I would literally cry.
Yes. I would love that.
But
And I love Kale. Like I use her a lot, by the way, because C6 Kale is like really good. So yeah, I would actually use that a lot.
isn't like C6 Kale comparable to like a C0 Tighnari? Isn't that like
Yes.
kind of a
well,
purpose?
I feel like she is.
Because they both have like an AoE field and stuff like that. Learning from your master. But when they first meet Kale and Tighnari, I like to believe that this was like in the rain, like there was a huge thunderstorm going on. This was before Tighnari was adverse to lightning. And there's actually 3 voice lines that they have from Tighnari. This young lady's name is Kale. It's okay if you can't read or write. We all start having no knowledge. In this, you are no different from anyone else. And shall we start with writing your name then?
So sweet.
So sweet, so kind. And when we first meet Kale in Sumeru as well, I don't remember if it was in the Archon line or if it was when she was like helping those kids with like the toys and stuff, which was a event, which I always thought was part of the Archon. It wasn't. It was a fucking event. She is shown like trying to practice writing her name too.
Oh, like when she leaves it in the
tree
log.
trunk.
Yeah, the tree trunk.
Yeah, she says she likes to go hang out in the tree trunks because they're comforting. I'm like, Kale, there's a therapist on Beto's boat. We can make that happen.
That's an R&R quest, no?
I don't know. So there were three things happening at first when Sumeru launched. So we had the Archon, we had the Aranara Odyssey, and then we had the event with the toy makers where like the kid's dad is like the author writing about the Aranara. So it was like one of those three. We do have an episode on Kale, so if you're interested in learning a little bit more about her more specifically, you can check that out too. But as a older kid now in the game, Kale says that she sees Tighnari as a gentle soul who is very patient, and says that he even reads out letters from Mondstadt for her, and she's very grateful to have him. So adorable. We also know that he's a little strict when it comes to the academics with her. He knows that she wants to be an academic, and even though he might not necessarily agree with academic life, he knows that it benefited him. So, you know, he's always trying to help her. And during Kave's hangout, we all sit down for dinner with Kave, Alhaitham, Tighnari, and Cyno, and Kale, where they're trying to figure out how they're going to help her get into the Akademiya. So she really got adopted into, you know, her forefathers right here.
It's like, what was that? 3 men and a baby?
Yeah, kind of. It makes me think of like 2.5 Men even, you know, where it's just like, you have random parents now, child. They're not just your parents.
They're not your parents that give you over to a psychopath.
Yeah, you know, no Dodoray. Listen, I'm waiting for the day that Tighnari gets to face down with Dodoray. Dottore, however you want to say his name. Because, like, he fucked over his daughter, and then he tries to take Hypatia and the Archon. Oof. Ooh.
Don't you dare lay hands on Hypatia.
Oh, yeah. That's, like, his other kid almost. So that leads us to the Archon quest. So we're not gonna like go too in detail about the Archon. We're just gonna stick to like Tighnari's part in it. Also, if I'm talking too much, please stop me.
No, you're not.
I think everybody's gonna be excited to hear you talk about him, honestly.
Yeah.
People want to hear you talk about him.
This is your moment.
Oh,
like
no.
This is your episode, Feeny.
I know, I feel much more prepared for this than I did the Albedo episode. Like I don't know.
I'm telling Albedo.
Oh, this is because it's me. I had to be prepared for me. But so if everyone can go back 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, when we went to Sumeru for the first time, and we go into a cave with some random lady that we've never met before, because why would
not?
we?
Yeah.
And she starts lighting up the drugs, aka incense. And the traveler passes out. And hears voices and shit like that. But we're going to ignore that because it's not important.
Our ayahuasca journey.
Yeah. If you want to learn more about the Archon line, the start of it from Sumeru, we do have a Sumeru so far episode from like a year ago, maybe, I don't know, 2 years ago. I don't know, something like that.
What is time?
In Genshin, it's infinite.
I know.
So we get knocked out. We later wake up and Tighnari is there, and he tells us that we must have had an allergic reaction to whatever the incense were. He tells us that he actually knows Hypatia and that she is still knocked out and he's trying to take care of her or something like that. And at first he's like gonna let us go, and then he's like, no, I actually think you guys have to stay here a few more days. And the few more days that we're there, we get to overhear him and Kale and his protectiveness of her. That's when we first learn about Elazar and the fact that Kale hasn't, that she's not necessarily doing well, which, great job, Cyno. You not only brought your husband a kid, but you brought him a sick kid. Like, Jesus. And Tighnari kind of acts as our introduction to what's going on in Sumeru. So what Elazar is, how it's affecting people, getting to see it firsthand with Kale. I remember she drops like some medicine. Tighnari checks out her hands. So we also get to see him being very like caring and doting of her. At one point, she gets mad because she's not on the list that day for like activities that have to be done as a ranger, and he says, I really think you should like take the day off, like I think you need to rest. And Kale gets very upset.
I think this is a big part of why we all are like, wait, why is he not a healer?
Yeah, because that's like your first two instances with him is him taking care of you and then trying to care for Kale's hand and him telling you about a disease.
Yeah.
Makes no fucking sense. And we know that like Cyno canonically goes to Tighnari when he's injured. So what the fuck? Anyway.
Well, that's called sexual healing. So
there's a little bit of both. Medicinal and sexual.
Wow.
I'm sorry, they can't do sexual healing until the medicinal healing happens first. You got to get better first. No risk of like furthering the injury.
No, I think he's like, here's an aspirin. This is gonna hurt.
Oh no.
I mean, I feel like Cyno would like it that way, and I feel like Tighnari would be more than happy to provide that. Listen, I'm just saying. Anyway, then Tighnari introduces us to the withering zones. He talks about the ley lines and how like the ley lines, the withering, and Irminsul are all connected. And he's the one who tells us that he's pretty sure that like Irminsul is sick. That's what the withering is representing. And he says that like his ancestors were told that by Rukkhadevata's familiars, aka the Aranara, but that no one knows how to fix it. So, he really sets us up right away. We're like, great, disease, poison tree under the ground, random witherings. We're really loving Sumeru so far, Tighnari. We eventually leave Tighnari, and the next time we see Tighnari is when we go to Paradise Dia, which is like the most beautiful place on the whole Teyvat map. You cannot tell me otherwise.
It is very pretty.
Is it a greenhouse, right? Like that's
Yeah.
I love that place. Pictures there, beautiful.
Good. It's beautiful, but I'm not giving it the most beautiful.
What's the most beautiful?
Where it's Malikata's little area.
Oh,
Their little
the
dream
oasis.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah, the oasis.
Oh, I really don't think that place is
where
pretty.
Tyna's frozen. That is, yeah, that is really, really pretty.
I don't know.
She's like, Tighnari's not involved in that, so I don't think so.
No, it's more so like there's just a lot of dead trees in that area. I don't like that.
There's nothing dead there.
All the tree trunks that are chairs are dead trees.
There's 3.
That's a lot. It's a lot. Listen,
3 handmade chairs. What do you think you're sitting on? A dead tree right now?
I'm not. I'm sitting on plastic. Thank you to my Razer Genshin collab chair for not being wooden. I appreciate it.
The other thing I like about the what is it? Paradise Dia, whatever it's called.
Dia, yeah.
Is it was like a safe haven for Karkata.
Oh, yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
And we'll talk about Karkata, my love, my little baby. Tighnari's son.
Yeah.
His daughter and then his son.
Oh my
Very
God.
different creatures. And it's also a safe haven for Hypatia. I mean, that's really what happens, right? It's like Tighnari takes Hypatia there to heal, which is like, okay, we're taking her to a greenhouse. Cool. And we find out in a flashback that El Dottore, that little fucker, showed up and he basically was like, give me Hypatia. And Tighnari was like, no. And he was like, I'm a harbinger. And he was like, I fucking know. Get off my land. Like, Tighnari.
Get off my land.
Yes, he stood up to a harbinger and kicked him out. He's like, get out of here, you fucker. You will not touch my girl. And then, that we see that flashback because us and Dia returned to give Tighnari a message from Cyno because we were out working with Cyno in the desert. And that is when
God forbid he goes back to see his daughter.
Yeah. Well, wait. I will defend Cyno here. Cyno was on the run. He had defected from the Akademiya at this point.
Oh, right. That's true.
He couldn't just show up at somewhere that was kind of academic. He was hiding in the desert. And we get there just in time for the Fatui to attack because Dottore is like, you're not keeping Hypatia from me. Because we find out that the incense that Hypatia exposed us to and exposed herself to are immediately connected to the false god they're trying to create, Scaramouche. So they want her because she's kind of like a medical anomaly for them, right? Like we can like agree to that.
Mhm.
They fight, and then while we're inside the greenhouse fighting and seeing Scaramouche, outside we find out that Tighnari was struck by lightning.
And we've never heard the end of it.
No.
Yeah. Okay, well, you know what? First off, he deserved a fucking cutscene. He's never had a great cutscene. Never.
I love how passionate you are about this.
It's just
I
like,
really love it.
it would have been.
Why do you
so
want to see him get
cool.
hurt? You want to see his pain firsthand.
I want to feel his pain. It's just so like
Well, let's
badass.
think about it. Why don't we see it?
Because they hate him.
All right.
Because
That's
they're
not
giving
true.
him Robin syndrome.
Oh,
When
yeah.
Robin gets hurt, he gets hurt off stage.
When
And then we find out about it. Batman's like, "You're dead." He's like, "No, I'm alive."
outside of the fact that there was quote unquote more important things happening inside the greenhouse that we were in there for, not including this cutscene, why do you think that they didn't include it? Outside of, like, do you think that there's a reason for the story not to actually show you? Or
No, there's
Brandon.
no reason.
what do you think?
I do think it felt weird that something like that happened and we didn't see anything. Like I will say that it felt like weirdly lazy, but like maybe I can only assume that it was like a pacing thing, which
Mhm.
I think we've talked before about how Sumeru, like some of the pacing feels weird sometimes in
Yeah.
Sumeru. But so I can only assume that it's because of that. But I do think that like that would have been like a really fun thing to see. But I also think it's really kind of cool that there was this fight happening and it was like shown from the traveler's perspective in a different place.
Yeah.
I just think that they could have done like I think we if I'm remembering correctly, there were like sounds happening or dialogue that we were overhearing. But I think they could have maybe like had like a lightning flash like out the window of the greenhouse or something, like make it like more obvious, like add more sound effects and just sort of like add some flourishes to it that like made us really want to see what was happening more than just after the fact.
Because too, like, if I want to stop being a little biased, Tighnari was the one who got hit, but he was standing right next to Dia. So it was really affecting two of the main characters, right, of this quest. And it's just weird that 2 5-star characters who have been guides for you during the game are in that level of danger, and you really don't get to see it. I mean, you barely see them fighting the Fatui out there.
Yeah. I feel like, and even at that time, I thought there was going to be a reason. I really thought there was going to be something that came up that, either it was going to like rewind or there was going to be something just nefarious about it not being shown.
Yeah, I did too, actually.
There is technically a rewind, but it just like relabels what happened to Tighnari, right? When Scaramouche goes into Irminsul and erases himself, it goes from, oh, Tighnari was hurt by an attack by the Balladeer to, oh, Tighnari got struck by a random burst of lightning. That's like the only difference,
They did that just for you.
Yeah, sure.
They were like, we have to address this.
But it's kind of fun because everyone always says that like if Cyno knew the truth, that he would have like fucked Hat Guy up by now. He would have like beaten him up. And obviously Cyno doesn't know the truth. And so Cyno is like, oh, Hat Guy, nice to meet you. Would you like to play TCG?
Oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah, because when we do tell Cyno that Tighnari was struck by lightning, and that he got hurt, and like there is as much as Genshin can do it, facial expression given by Cyno. And he kind of goes like, how Cyno, when he's like upset, he goes like, and then it shows like a ... usually. That's what happened when we told him that. And another fun thing about the lightning strike, not to harp again on it too much, but if you have done Tighnari's story quest by then, Karkata is there to hold Tighnari up. And I think he's like sitting on Karkata. If you haven't done Tighnari's storyline, Tighnari will sit on the floor, which I think is a fun little detail. And I feel like Sumeru was the first time they started introducing details like that of like, if you've done this, this will happen.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, they probably did something, but they really amped it up in Sumeru.
Yeah, it was like more honed in details.
Yeah, and they really made it more so of like, hey, stop, you can't do this. You should do this. Like they kind of guided you a little bit more on those things.
They
Yeah,
were like,
I'd always,
do
you know,
you want to kill this person from the House of the Hearth? And I was like, yes, I do.
I always remember you saying that there was a difference between the two. And I don't think I ever asked you afterwards. I did his story after the Archon.
And I think I did it before that part of the Archon. So yeah, that's the difference. It's a cute little like moment of caregiver and master again.
It's really sweet.
And so there's only one other part of the Archon that I'm going to bring up, even though Tighnari's technically not in it. So everything gets... Oh, actually, no. I'm going to bring up two more things. So we find out everything gets resolved, and they have this big like banquet out in the Grand Bazaar. They don't invite Tighnari. Or at least he's not there. Now, one may say that Tighnari didn't go because he was recovering from being struck by lightning. But we also know that bitch don't rest. He literally was trying to work the second he got struck. One may also say...
And you know who was there?
Nilou. Fucking Nilou. Nilou and Alhaitham and Nahida. Did you know that Tighnari didn't even meet Nahida during the Archon quest? Like, he was he was literally working to save her life. I'm almost positive the first time Tighnari meets Nahida is Nahida's birthday event. Like, that's how crazy that is. Like, again, he just like got the short end of the fucking stick. Now they do like reference Tighnari, like Cyno says that like he's going back to Gandharvaville to also celebrate with Tighnari and Kale. Because at the end of the Archon quest, we also know that Kale is now free of Elazar. So, you know, maybe Tighnari and Kale weren't going to trounce into the city because of the injuries and stuff. Maybe Cyno was like, don't you fucking dare leave your bed. I don't know what the situation is there. I also don't know if Tighnari would fucking listen to him. So that's that. But Tighnari does...
Wasn't Kale taking care of Tighnari?
That's what they say. But Tighnari, again, takes care of himself for the most part. You know what I mean? Like, Kale was like making
That's what they say.
That's what they say.
That's just what the story told us, but you know.
He's just like, he's so independent. Like Brandon said it earlier, like, despite having parents around, he is just was an independent person his whole life. I'll do it myself. I'll get it done. And maybe that's because his parents were really, maybe, you know, I'm giving his parents too much credit. Maybe they were like really divulged in their studies and he didn't really have them around. Maybe that's why he is the way he is. I don't know. They haven't told me that much. But we do
they
find
didn't
out.
Come over and tell you personally.
Right, exactly. How fucking dare them? I'm going to call them.
They haven't told me. I don't know.
They haven't informed me yet.
I think he just listens to a lot of Beyonce and he's like, I'm an independent woman.
He's like, put a ring on it, Cyno. Just put a fucking ring on it. Stop bringing me children. Stop putting a ring on it.
This body's too bootylicious for you, babe.
I'm just imagining Tighnari dancing around to Beyonce now. But
I'm imagining B dancing around to Beyonce right now.
Oh, no. No one wants to see that.
I do.
Well, for the comedy, maybe.
So, one other thing we learn at the end of the Archon, we get to see a bunch of flashbacks where we also realize that if it wasn't for Tighnari, the Archon line may have never really taken off as much as it did. This is because of Naphis. So I mentioned Naphis earlier. I mentioned that he's actually a pretty big deal for the Archon line, even though I didn't mention him at all. So Naphis is the sage of Amurta. He's Tighnari's mentor, as we know. So if you remember, during the Sumeru Archon line, the sages were like, hell yeah, let's make a fake god. Because that's what academics want to do. And they try to get all the sages in on it. And Nafis, as well as the sage of Vahumana, are like, no way, man. We are not doing that. That is ridiculous. And they both get locked up because of that. Locked away in like prison in the basin of the Akademiya. Sages, though, they pretend that Nafis and the Vahumana sage are still like doing their thing. And they actually try to rope Tighnari into the project because they need someone. And they know that this is like Nafis's number one pupil. So they start writing letters to him pretending to be Nafis. And Tighnari is kind of like, these letters are sus. My mentor would not be this nagging about a project. And if he was, he would come and talk to me in person. He just knew that like Nafis wouldn't beg. And he also felt like the passion wasn't in his writing. Like normally he'd have like a lot of like angry rants in his letters and like that wasn't happening. So he got really suspicious. And he ends up writing a letter back saying that he would consider it if, Nafis could tell him more about the project. And they send a different sage out to Gandharvaville. And this sage tries to pressure Tighnari into joining the cause, telling him basically that if he doesn't do it, he's going to make Nafis look bad. And Tighnari kind of scoffs at him and is like, if Nafis really was concerned about his reputation, he would have come and talked to me himself. So you can tell him to come visit me or I'm not doing this project. And that is when Tighnari reaches out to Cyno. And he's like, Cyno, I don't know what's going on. I think something might be up with Nafis. And he explains everything. And Tighnari, as long as they'd known each other, had never asked a favor of Cyno as a matra. This was like, not only are you my friend, but you are the matra. Not only are you my husband, but you are the matra. And I need your help looking into this. And what Cyno finds is what leads him to leaving the Akademiya, running away to the desert where we fight. We see Al-Haytham and Cyno fight and all of that jazz. And none of like the Cyno portion of the quest would have happened if Tighnari didn't ask him to look into this. Which angers me even more. Because he literally set off the like major part of the Archon quest and they couldn't even give him a cutscene. They couldn't invite him to the dinner. Like he couldn't
wasn't even invited to the party.
Yeah, what the fuck? It's just very frustrating for me. But whatever. That's the Archon line for you. So then there's a lot going on with Tighnari. Like I said, he is in a lot of stuff because he is the Robin to Cyno's Batman. So Tighnari does have his own story quest where we get to meet Karkata.
Rabby.
So Paimon and Traveler, as per usual, how most story quests start, go to talk to Catherine. And Catherine is like, hey, yo, what up? There's some weird contamination stuff going on. Not a withering, though. Can you look into it? And Paimon and Traveler are like, yeah, we'll look into it, but we should talk to Tighnari first. So they go and they ask Tighnari about it. But Tighnari's like a little preoccupied. There's a sick boy that they're trying to heal. And
a dramatic sick boy.
Yes, very drama, Yara.
Mm-hmm.
And they need like this special type of grass for the remedy. And so they decide to go buy some, even though Tighnari's like, I could buy it, but I'll probably still have to pick some myself. And the merchant is like, yeah, I'm closed. And he's like, what do you mean you're closed? And he's like, well, me and a bunch of the other merchants, we decided that we were going to buy these mechanical parts, but then a giant mechanical crab stole them. And now we're scared. And also, like, we think the crab is near that, like, contamination zone that we've seen notices about. And so we can't get, like, our stuff back. And Tighnari is like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, there's a boy's life at stake, and this is what we're dealing with right now. So he's like, okay, cool. And he turns to us and he's like, you want to go find the contamination zone? So we do, and we go and we start trying to look for it, and we run into the mechanical crab. And we're like, oh, like the crab can kind of talk to us, but like nothing too crazy. So we hang out with it while Tighnari goes and collects all the parts, which I'm like, damn, we like babysat a mechanical crab. And then Tighnari's like, you want a sweet little treat, crab? And he like he
bribes him.
He bribes him. He's like, you want a sweet little treat? And he like gives him a little piece of mechanical part. And Karkata's like, nom nom nom. The crab is like, nom nom nom. And so Tighnari's like, all right, I'm going to put a trap in place. Stay here. I'll be back. So he sets up the trap for the crab. And we all go back with the mechanisms and we give them to the merchants, and then they're able to help us get the grass, and Kale helps make the cure for Yara. And then we return to the crab, who is still there, just vibing. He has not tried to run away. He's chilling. So then Tighnari's like, I'll give you some more candy if you bring me to your home, little boy. And the crab is like, yes, let's do it. And then we see like a Sumeru rose, but it's glowing. And Tighnari's like, yeah, that's not great. And we're like, what do you mean that's not great? And he's like, well, a glowing Sumeru rose indicates that the ley lines are no bueno. And we're like, fuck, all right. And then all of a sudden, Paimon's like, bruh, where are all the animals? And Tighnari's like, duh-ho, this is the bad ley lines. Like, why would an animal go near a bad ley line? So Tighnari's like, you want to see little squirrels? I got you. And he purifies the area, brings back the animals, but then the crab runs away. And we end up getting attacked. And we save some random guy named Jazar. And he's like, oh my god, what the fuck is that mechanical crab? And we're like, it's none of your business. Go to Gandharvaville.
Mind your business and get out.
And we send him off to do his thing. We end up having to camp for the night. And that's when Tighnari tells us that the Akademiya has actually banned research on mechanical beings like this. And he's like, so we got to keep this kind of hush-hush. Like, if we run into more people, don't tell them. Also, at this point, the mechanical crab tries to make us coffee. Very cute. Cosgrove can't make me coffee, my dog. Yeah. Not that I would drink it.
Like, there's at one point, too, where Tighnari is like, maybe I shouldn't keep giving him all the little treats, because then he's going to, like, kind of figure it out and, like, just kind of do stupid little things. This way we give him more treats. And then it's like, oh, but he made us coffee. Just give him some.
Here's another sweet little treat.
Yeah.
Why is Karkata so emotionally intelligent?
He really is.
We do find out. So then the next day we are back off. We get up, we pack up the campsite, we get where we need to go, we destroy more monsters, and after destroying them, we see something called an extracting machine, which is basically something that is like extracting power from the ley lines. And Tighnari is like, this is what's causing the contamination zone. The traveler starts to like not feel great, and then the crab runs away. So there's a lot going on. Abatui. And Karkata, somehow or another, is able to show us that this is Abatui and that we are Karkata. And Tighnari, I, Crab, and Karkata.
We find videotapes.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, so like eerie.
Yeah. Because there's even like one point where like, what's this? And he's like, oh, they're videotapes. We're like, why haven't we ever seen this before? And they have to like kind of make a reason why there's videotapes that they can watch the recordings of things that happened third party. It's very weird.
Because
the beginning of the technology boom that happens in Genshin.
Well, Sumeru does jumpstart it though, because we know that the camera is an invention from Sumeru too. So it makes sense that they'd have video. But we find out that Abatui is actually a classmate of Tighnari's, and they even have like a photo together. It's really sad.
But even more so, he's a junior researcher to him. And that confuses Paimon, because Paimon's like, this dude doesn't look younger than you. And he's like, well, age is just a number when it comes to academics.
He's like, I started college at 7.
Yeah. But then, like, he goes on to say, and this part I just wanted to bring up just because it's a little sus, is he's, like, talking about it and how, like, all the junior researchers, like, looked up to him and stuff, but they would always, like, pull him over to, like, take a photo with him, but he always felt, like, awkward about it. Like, they were trying to, like, put, like, an animal on display. And it was like, does he have a complex? Does he have a fennec fox complex?
I mean, he's the only guy with ears I've seen in Sumeru.
But he's not the only guy in Teyvat with animalistic characteristics.
Yeah, but, like, that's like saying, like, I'm the only girl with bangs in all of New York, but people outside of New York have bangs, right? Like, I've never seen someone else.
I'm the only girl with bangs in New York. Like, people on the PATH train, they just get banned. They're not allowed to get off the train. They have to go right back to Jersey.
No, sent right back. But yeah, like when he lives in an area where he's never seen these other people. He's never seen Diona, Kirara, Goru, Lynette. Like none of that is like common ground for him,
Yeah.
From what it seems, the only Valuka Shuna that he's seen are his parents possibly too.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm sure like he feels like a show dog. But also that could be just him feeling like awkward too about the academics because like they mentioned, like fennec foxes or Valuka are typically loners. So for Tighnari to just want to like quietly study in a corner and all these people constantly be like trying to befriend him and socialize him and take photos with him, it might also just be like, ugh.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we find out that Abatui, he basically was trying to make Karkata, the robot crab, a real boy.
Hmm.
And one of the tasks he told him to do was make coffee. And when he got poor, instead of pulling a cave and getting poorer, he said, fuck it. I'm just going to pull power from the ley lines. And he turned on a bunch of extractors, like the one that we turned off. And turning on the last extractor actually killed him. We also find out that before dying, he tried to give Karkata some instincts. And that's why I think he's as like human as he is, like you were saying earlier.
Mm-hmm.
We end up shutting off all of the excavators, and then we get the saddest moment in the whole game.
Yeah.
Where Karkata tries to fix Abatui with all the mechanical parts.
Ugh.
It is.
I still can't.
It's heartbreaking. I literally started to cry as I rewatched it because he's just this fucking mechanical crab and he's taking the little mechanical things and he's just putting it on him. And they're like falling over. So he's like, oh no. He picks them up, he puts them on him again. And then he like nudges his little face. It's so fucking sad. It's like the 2 minutes of sadness.
And it's
I know,
like,
and he's so coded like as a dog that it makes it so much more emotional, like for anyone who's ever had a dog.
Yeah.
Like imagining like your dog doing something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And like they also put the little thoughts in your head too, like right before that, and like some of those little videotape recordings, like, Abatui says things like, oh, you probably wouldn't even notice if I died, because, he thinks he failed at making this creature.
Yeah.
But really he didn't. He just didn't go the way that he thought it would. But he like adds these little things in there about like, like, hey, can you, he says when he's having like a heart attack, basically, because he stopped taking his medicine to save money. So don't stop taking your medicine to save money.
Health
he has a heart
insurance.
attack. Yeah. He goes to have he has
He
like a heart
decides that he's gonna have a heart
decides he's gonna have a
attack.
heart attack at this point. Yeah. So then he's like, hey, like, Karkata, can you like turn off the extractor because that shit's gonna go crazy if it just stays on and I'm on the floor dying. And Karkata just stands there because that wasn't one of his commands that he knew how to do.
Yeah.
So he like dies thinking that he failed. But meanwhile, like Karkata is like making random people coffee and trying to fix him with like, because he taught him to fix himself when he was, when he needed new parts and stuff like that. So Karkata was just then doing it to him.
Yeah. It was so sad.
Oh,
But then you get a little mad, right? Because now you're like, all right, Tighnari, like, what's the deal here? Like, you just told me that researching and making this crab guy is like illegal, basically. And so Tighnari's like, well, we're gonna have to report this to the Adventurers Guild. And basically the Akademiya says that we'll end up, taking the lab apart and then they'll disassemble Karkata and we'll move on. And he's like, bye. And he kind of starts walking away. And we're like, what the fuck? He says, but come see me tomorrow, like at Paradis Dia. And we're like, all right. So Paimon's a little upset now with him. She's like, they're just gonna disassemble Karkata. Like he has a heart. Like, the whole thing. Like we all probably were thinking in the moment. And so we go to Paradis Dia and we meet with Tighnari. And he's like, oh, whoa. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. I am sorry you're mad at me. That is Akademiya protocol, but I didn't follow that at all. So, as per usual, Tighnari breaking the rules because he hates academics. He was like, yeah, I didn't do that. Abatui had been kicked out of the Akademiya, so he technically wasn't an academic. Therefore, in Tighnari's eyes, did not have to follow Akademiya rules. So his research really wasn't something that belonged to the Akademiya. So Tighnari took a few items of his research and kept it with him, and he destroyed the rest of it, as well as the lab, and he buried Abatui, and he gave him like a send-off. He then brought Karkata back to Paradis Dia. And while there, he did some repairs to him, and he's decided that he's going to keep him there to eventually use as a research assistant, which we do see at some point. I don't remember when, but we do get to see Karkata research assisting, which is cute as shit. Now, you can still go and see Karkata there. During the day, he is a box, and at night, he comes out and hangs out. But there's a few interesting details of how they have gotten around Karkata being there. So there is a voice line from Tighnari where he says, "Don't worry about Karkata. I told the Matra I know that it's my research assistant. If anyone wants to do anything to it, they'll need to go through me. Since you seem to care a lot about Karkata, why don't you enroll in some courses as Spot and Mod? That way you can care for it if I'm gone." Which Tighnari, like, come on, no darkness here. But it's like, why was Tighnari just able to tell the Matra, right? And then you remember that his boyfriend is the General Mahamatra, and I don't remember if it's Al-Haytham's story quest or like the end of something else. Where you're in an office. I do think it might be like when Al-Haytham is still the sage and we're in his office. And there's a bunch of things on the desk and you can read them. It's like a bunch of different books and notes and things. And one of the notes said that the Matra had been looking into a giant crab sighting in Paradis Dia.
Oh, yeah.
But that it was reported to be nothing and that they were good. So it reads to me, when you put those two pieces together, that Tighnari went up to Cyno and was like, "You'll go through me before you do anything to Karkata, so figure it out." And Cyno was like,
meaning you will do nothing.
You will do nothing, or I will not do anything for you ever again. And do you not want sweet kisses at night, Cyno? I don't think so. So that's the end of the story.
Like, do you want this tale?
No sex for you. Now, Tighnari is involved in a ton of shit because between the Sumeru Archon line ending and the start of Fontaine, they basically gave Cyno a vacation. And they're open about that he takes like this long-winded vacation time. And he travels a lot with Cyno at that point. So you have them in Windbloom, where they have both accompanied Kale to Mondstadt. Tighnari is kind of like, I came here because I wanted to like have this bonding moment with Kale, but also because I've always wanted to study the fauna of Mondstadt, and this is perfect. Cyno, on the other hand, is like, I'm just here to protect Kale. And Tighnari gives him a dirty look, and Kale basically is like, that's a bold-faced lie. And he starts mumbling about this guy, Calx, that is drawing a TCG card. And Albedo is there, and Albedo is Calx. And he's like, haha, that's me. You want that? I could do that. Okay. And you're like, wow, this is the fever dream I've been wanting. It was like the perfect event for me.
Except for that one part.
Except for that. Yeah, we don't talk about that part. And it's really cute because, like, they're basically saying, this is Tighnari and Cyno, and this is their daughter, Kale. And this is Albedo, and this is his daughter, Sucrose. Or mentor-mentee. I know some people ship Albedo and Sucrose. Maybe you don't like the familial ties, but, you get the idea. They're showing...
I was going to say, like... the people who do ship Albedo and Sucrose are like, excuse me.
Well, yeah, that's why I brought up that you could also be looking at, like, these are Sucrose. This is Sucrose's mentee. So anyway, so Sucrose and Tighnari immediately bond, and he wants to, like, talk shop with Sucrose. And that's when Cyno is like, we're on vacation. stop. Like, very husband of him. And Tighnari's like, I'm sorry, like things have been really crazy at work, because the sages are now living in my forest. But I'm like super excited to be here. And then they get to meet Amber and Eula. And Tighnari is like, yo, Kale talks about you guys all the time. And we also find out that Kale has been to Mondstadt alone since the end of the Archon. Which is interesting why like Cyno felt like he had to go protect Kale this time around. That's when we get the library scene, which I'm gonna let Tiff talk about. Basically, it's Albedo, Tighnari, and Cyno together in the library, and something odd gets said.
They refer to each other as brothers.
They're just bearding themselves.
Yeah. They say they like completely like friend zone them in this well, brother zone them, I guess, actually. This because they're talking about Albedo and his, sister of Klee and like that little relationship kind of thing there too. But yeah, they call each other brothers. And people got very mad about it.
It was gross and
yes.
No one wanted it.
Right. No one wanted it.
I laughed my ass off at it.
Now, a lot of people did say that in the Chinese translation, they did not call each other siblings, and that the term they used is more of like a term of endearment to signify that like your family. So there is a big sense that it was a translation issue. Listen, these two cannot just be brothers because the Cyno VA literally released that song to the Princess Peach song. That's like, he's like, Nari, 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 I love you. Like, yeah, like obviously they ship it.
But
so
that's just the voice actor though.
Well, I've seen some Honkai Impact manga translations, and they do something like that where they'll call two clearly lesbian lovers like sisters. And I'm like, we all know y'all ain't sisters. Like, you kissed her.
Yeah, so, we literally watched you make out. Like,
yeah, we watched you kiss her on the lips, so I don't think you're sisters. So I get that.
So we're gonna go with translation issue. Because it just makes more sense. But that's also when we find out that Tighnari is the youngest of the two of them. And Tighnari does make some like kind of back-handed comment where he's like, yeah, by actual physical years, like Cyno may be older than me, but by maturity, he may be the youngest sibling of us all when comparing them in college. Again, bringing back the sibling thing, but he is basically like, Cyno is not an adult. And also it's cute because at one point Paimon is like, man, I've never seen Cyno like so lighthearted. And Tighnari's like, yeah, that's because you've only seen him work. This is what he's like normally. It's so infuriating. Like, he's like, this is my husband.
He won't stop telling jokes.
Yeah, but Albedo finds the jokes funny, and Tighnari's like, knock it off, alchemist.
Isn't there one point where Cyno tells a joke outside when they're like camping outside Mondstadt, and the look that they give him is like pure disgust.
Yeah, I actually made a drawing of it, of the Tighnari look. Like, he's literally like, bruh, shut up. Like, It's amazing. Otherwise, Windbloom is mostly Kale's journey, Kale and Sucrose's. We do find at one point Tighnari and Albedo chatting it up, talking about flowers, and they end up like talking about like making calla lilies, like, and how Sucrose makes them kind of crazy and names them weird. And Tighnari's like, is that a joke? And Albedo's like, no. He's like, unfortunately not. And then the other little bit of pieces we get of Tighnari is that we see Mika and Tighnari bonding over surveying. And Mika's like really impressed by Tighnari, and he's like, I guess that makes sense. Like, forest rangers would be similar. And Tighnari is able to convince Mika to make a soup and eat not make a soup. He gets a soup recipe from Albedo earlier on. He's able though to convince Mika to eat those mushrooms that grow on the buildings in Mondstadt. He's like, bro, they're good. Just do it.
I'll be your dealer.
Yeah. Mika's like, I can just climb up the wall. It's fine. The next event that we see Tighnari in is the Darshan Champion event, where Tighnari is representing the Emerta Darshan. He's very clear that he really doesn't want to win. He's just there because he thinks he can help promote some lectures he has going on soon. But nonetheless, him and Kale actually run this experiment using like incense to try to attract butterflies, and it works. And because of that, Tighnari is able to win the first round of the competition. In the second round of the competition, he goes out into the desert, despite Cyno telling him not to do it, and he gets heat stroke. And luckily, we find him, and then Hat Guy, aka Scaramouche, shows up with water, which is like the most fun little version of irony ever, and helps him. And Cyno like basically acts like Tighnari is dying, and he's like, "I'll remember you. I'll fight for you." And when we're like walking him back, Cyno is like, "Didn't I ask you if you were all right before this? If you had just decided to withdraw then, you wouldn't have had to suffer." Which I'm like, oh my God, you literally cannot tell me that they're not married. Like, I don't care. Then during the Darshan event, you know, Kaveh has his whole Sachin moment where he sees the ghost of that guy. And when Kaveh kind of like wakes up out of it, Tighnari is like right by his side, is checking in on him, like, you know, being like a doctor to him type of thing. Kaveh and Tighnari is like a really fun dynamic that I don't think a lot of people see. And fanfic writers have done a really good job of showcasing the two of them together and the lightheartedness that is between them. But even if you look at the picture of like their fathers, Kaveh and Tighnari's fathers are like the ones drinking and having fun while the other two kind of brood in the corner. It's like, those are our wives and we're just going to watch them as they have fun. But anyway, after the whole Darshan thing...
Wait. Did you just reveal some kind of headcanon where all their parents are together as well? Or are their fathers specifically?
No, I didn't have that type of headcanon, no. But I do headcanon that there's all similar in nature, where like Tighnari and Kaveh are probably similar to their fathers, where they're like a little more lighthearted and like to have fun.
Oh, okay. So you meant the younger ones. I thought you meant like their fathers were like, those are our wives.
No. But so after the Darshan event is over, Kaveh invites us all out to dinner, and everyone goes except for Alhaitham. So it's Kaveh, Cyno, Kale, and Tighnari, and us. And of course, Kaveh brings up Alhaitham, in which case Tighnari says, "No dinner with Kaveh is complete without a few words about Alhaitham." And Cyno goes, "He lives rent-free in our heads." Which is like kind of a dig at Kaveh, I think, too, because he pays rent. And then
Rude.
when the whole event is over, if you use Nahida's little mind reading power, you can go up to Tighnari and he thinks to himself, "I wonder when Kaveh will be able to pay off his debts." Sigh. I wish him the best of luck. So, you know. And then the most recent event that I think is a bigger deal that Tighnari is involved in is Nahida's birthday event. Despite the fact that Tighnari has never fucking met the Dendro Archon, he gets wind from Naphis that they are preparing a giant birthday celebration for her. And somehow or another, Tighnari ends up organizing this. And he is in charge of like the younger generation and getting the shit together. He really doesn't have a big part in the in this like event. He does yell at us and tell us that the fewer people that know the secret, the better. We're dealing with the god of wisdom here. A single slip of the tongue is enough to spoil the whole thing. We get some great facial expressions from all of them when Nahida shows up. Presumably the first time Tighnari's ever fucking met. And they're like, "Oh shit, the birthday girl's here." And they lie and they do a pretty good job. Tighnari's also the one in that event that points out that Nilou has not showed up for a meeting. And he's the one who asks the Traveler to be the Knight of Flowers leading the parade for the event. So while he's not a major plot point in it, I think we see a lot more of like Cyno, Alhaitham, and Kaveh. Tighnari again pulls the short stick in this situation. But he does show off his leadership skills. And I guess it kind of showcases that Tighnari works very well behind the scenes, that he doesn't necessarily need the spotlight.
Hey, was invited. Unlike the time when they had dinner.
That's like, true. He's the general watch leader for a reason.
Yeah.
So there's a few other places that Tighnari shows up. And one of them is
Simulanka?
Oh, I wasn't even going to bring that up yet. Yeah, Simulanka.
I was just thinking events.
Oh, tell the story of Simulanka with Tighnari, because it literally gives me a headache.
It gives you a Why does it give you a headache?
Because it was just so crazy.
I'm like now thinking, did I forget a part of it? He wasn't a part of the full story of Simulanka. He shows up at the end when other people come visiting and stuff over into the little land of all the toys and all those things, but he's more so involved into the part that's afterwards. After we leave the little storybook land and everybody's trying to figure out who wrote in the book.
It's so stupid.
Yeah. And basically and we mentioned it very recently in one of our other episodes where, it's basically the stories, the devs are just trolling us and being like, you think too much about little things. You make a big story out of a little detail and it's not true. And that was basically the whole point of it.
But the best part of the whole thing was Cyno is really the one who solves the issue and realizes that, like, we're looking for nothing, because he points and he goes, Tighnari did this. And we're like, what? And he's like, yeah, see this circled word that's confusing you? That's from Tighnari. And we're like, how in fucking Archon's name do you know that? And he's like, Tighnari's been using the same pen since we were in college.
Mm-hmm.
That's his pen.
I don't want that kind of pen. I don't got a pen that'll last that long.
I want a man dedicated to those levels of details in my life.
I like where we just went off on that. Fiends is like, I want a dude who recognizes my handwriting. Tim is like, I want a pen that lasts I want a pen that lasts years. Simple things.
So
I just don't want to run out of ink.
I don't blame you, honestly. But still, a man who could say that's Amanda's ink, I would die. I'd be like, yes, marry me right now. Anyway, we did mention earlier that Tighnari is slightly brought up in the Kaveh hangout, and we talked about that already. He's also in Emily's hangout, which was totally random and unexpected. Emily is the fake perfume lady from Fontaine.
The second perfume lady that we meet in the game.
The crime scene investigator.
Yeah, / CSI agent. So if you ever wanted to have a mixture of like Macy's meets FBI, you found your girl. So we do know that Tighnari at some point had actually like searched for her and found Emily, and that they had done a lot of coordinating through letters. They've offered to help one another. And Emily was like, oh yeah, like when Tighnari and I started to get more comfortable with each other, he would even tell me about his companions. So, he's talking about his husband and his daughter, as one would. So in Emily's story quest, we actually run into Tighnari in Port Ormos, where he tells us they're planning a flower exhibit. And he's kind of in charge of helping out, but he's not like the flower master. And then all of a sudden, Emily shows up. And Tighnari is like, oh, yeah, this is my friend Emily. And she tells us that there's this, like, flower that she heard has reappeared in Sumeru. And that, like, she wants to find it because it's kind of a big deal in the perfume market, which, like, Genshin, so niche. We ended up in the perfume market. Like, what? And Tighnari, like, kind of talks a little bit about how he's reached out to the forest rangers and no one knows anything about it. And that's really the end of his relation in that story quest, but it was fun to see him. Tighnari also shows up in Feruzan's story quest. So Feruzan has like a good level of respect for Tighnari. She considers him the living, breathing version of the Rainforest Survival Guide. She is 100 years old. If you remember, she was stuck in a Deshret puzzle, basically. And Tighnari is really the one who kind of tells the traveler about Feruzan during this hangout. So as most hangouts do, there's different paths you can go down. There's two that, in my opinion, were the most important, just to get an essence of Tighnari. He asks Feruzan for help making Karkata better, because when Feruzan was originally in the Akademiya, the mechanical stuff wasn't illegal. And he actually pulls us to the side and tells us about like how she was found out like outside the puzzle and like she couldn't remember anything and it took her days to finally like remember who she was and what happened, and she didn't really remember the whole scope of things either. And she does end up helping Tighnari with Karkata, and Tighnari's like, hey, like, don't be sympathetic with her, don't be like, not sympathetic, he's like, don't be sorry for her. Like, she doesn't want that. She wants to move on from it. And he even says that he can tell Farazan isn't herself after helping Karkata, and that, you know, there might be some memories and stuff of the fact that like all the people she studied with in the Akademiya are dead and she doesn't have anyone to go to. And in another alternate ending of the hangout, we helped Tighnari and Kale get Farazan from Sumeru City to go to Paradise Dia, where she's late for a meeting with Tighnari. So it's kind of our adventure with Kale into the city to get Farazan. Farazan's also an interesting character because she's really talkative, and Tighnari and Cyno actually use Kale as a mechanism to get out of conversations with her. Which we see.
So sad.
It is sad. And we see that in Cyno's second story quest. So that, I guess, brings us to Cyno, right? I've talked a lot about how they're dating and stuff like that. But we learn a lot about the two of them during Cyno's story quests, which is unfortunate because Cyno's not really involved in Tighnari's. Maybe that's their way of showing Tighnari as like the independent hoe that he is, where like he doesn't necessarily need Cyno in his story quest to tell who he is. But it's very clear based on the way the writers have done it that Tighnari is an important part of Cyno's stories. So Cyno story quest number 1. This is where Cyno's like mentor friend dies in the sand. I'm not going into details on it because all that matters is the end, where we run into Cyno and Tighnari both in Caravan Rivet together. In which case, the first thing we hear is Tighnari going, trying to single-handedly bring 300 people to justice must feel pretty exhilarating, but I can assure you this is certainly not the best solution. In which case, Cyno goes, I'm aware. So
very married behavior.
Yes. Then Tighnari and him have like kind of a conversation where now Tighnari is starting to get Cyno's viewpoint of why maybe he did it. And he goes, fine, I understand. But this is a type of trap I've been working on which uses plants. Here, take some just in case you need them next time. And he explains like how to use them, how they work. He goes, I don't really have much use for these types of traps, but maybe you will, and you can help me collect some more testing data. Then Paimon and Travelers start to talk to Tighnari, and he goes, I've only dropped by to check for any injuries. So basically he's like, I came to make sure my husband is safe. I fucking hate the desert. And he goes, he seems to be fine physically, but he looks a little more lonely than I remember. And then he looks at Cyno and he goes, Jesus. Basically, he's like, Jesus, Cyno, relax. Go play TCG. Like, come on. Like, very.
Go play your video games.
Yeah. It was the start of the TCG phenomenon.
This is where my husband would say, go play Genshin. Go feel better. So that is the first story quest and the importance there. But then we have the second story quest. And literally, the second story quest is half Cyno, half Tighnari. Like, it's kind of weird. It's almost like you get a, like, 1.5 Hank story quest for Tighnari within this. Where it starts...
And we have a whole episode on it.
We do. We have a whole episode on it. I'm only going to briefly talk about where Tighnari comes into play, where we go camping with them. And, like, when something weird happens, we're like, guys, something weird's happening. And Tighnari's like, let's get dressed and then look into it. And we're like, get dressed? You're the only ones not dressed, apparently. What were you doing in your tent?
Mm-hmm.
Because we find out that Cyno and Tighnari were sharing a tent. Just saying. Then, like, Cyno runs off and all this jazz. And Tighnari is like, all right, we have to go to the desert. And literally everyone... Kaveh, El-Haytham, the Traveler, Nafis, they are all like, dude, you can't survive in the desert. And he's like, my man is missing. And we're like, all right. And this is when I hear that song that I need a man, a man. It's a very fun song. So we go into
and then
the
he's
desert.
fine in the desert too.
He is fine, yeah, but he says he like packs a lot of water. Like they do like emphasize that he is prepped.
Right.
He's the one who like approaches Sethos in the desert and is like, "Hey man, help me find my bitch." Like, that type of thing. He then fights in like a fucking duel match. We also fight in it to help Cyno protect his Herbanumus powers. Even Sethos has a voice line about it where he's like commenting on how strong he thinks Tighnari is because of how bad he is in the desert and how he was still able to fight like that. He also thinks he's really kind, but that's a different story. So this whole fight ends, and then Tighnari basically like drags Cyno by the ear back to the Akademiya, while also simultaneously doing the same thing to Cyrus, who is Cyno's mentor. And Naphis scolds Cyno and Cyrus. We get some cute Cyno dad moments, but then we find out that like Tighnari and Cyno used to hang out in the tree together, and they show us like their sunset makeout spot in the tree. So there's a lot of like crumbs of Tighnari everywhere. And there's a good amount of people who have like comment on him as well, right? You have Alhaitham, who thinks that people misjudge Tighnari, and that they think he's cold when he's actually very helpful, and brings up how Kaveh got Tighnari's help with the whole withering situation with the house he was building for Dori. And he suggests that Kaveh wouldn't survive without the kindness of people like Tighnari. Doesn't bring up himself letting him live there, but whatever. And Tighnari seems pretty understanding of Alhaitham. He's like, yo, be wary of him, not because he's a bad guy, but because people think his rationale comes off cold. But he's really not cold, I promise. Apparently Baiju has heard about Tighnari and has a lot of questions about herbal remedies from him.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm hoping maybe we'll get a Lantern Rite moment.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
We do have Lantern Rite like around the corner, and in the preview for it, we did see Tighnari and Cyno, so that'd be fun. Dia,
and I still won't get Mawika because guess who I lost 50-50 to?
The best boy.
You know what? C1 and 2 were enough of the best boy. C3, it's pushing it.
Well, I want C6, so I got him C4'd.
If I could give you my constellations, I would.
I know. And I would give you anything. I'd be like, what do you want? Take them. Here's my Monet constellation.
I'll take a Jean.
Okay.
I would take my very first Kuching.
I'll give you mine. You can have my C6 Kuching. Speaking of Dia, though, Dia considers Tighnari the one that got away because she was supposed to do like a desert tour with him, but then it got canceled because, he's not good with the heat. Tighnari also mentions that, everything happened so fast at Paradis Dia, and he didn't get a chance to properly thank her. He said having such a capable, reliable person like her on your side is always extremely fortunate. And he mentions how he'd love to have her as a forest ranger, but there's no point in asking her because he knows that she lives her own life.
She's like, fuck that shit.
Yeah.
Do my own thing.
Dori says that Tighnari loves learning as much as I love Mora. And
that's a lot.
Yeah, I know. It's not even like she says almost as much. It's as much. She tries to get Tighnari to partner with her on a lot of projects, but he always refuses, and he has an excuse, but you can kind of tell that it's like a moral obligation to say no. But he has worked with her before to get some rare materials for some sketchy research project he won't talk to us about. So, questions. Kaveh considers Tighnari one of the nicest people that you could ever know. He also says that he's really smart, but doesn't brag. And seems to really care about what he does. And he was very surprised when Tighnari introduced him to Cyno as his best friend because he felt they were so polar opposite. Then Lisa says, when talking about Kale, she mentions that, Kale is turning out the way she is because of the wonderful and warm-hearted master of hers. And Tighnari says that, Cyno has mentioned her before and that she seems chill. This is where you also learn that Nahida has never met Tighnari. She feels like he has to be gentler with people or people aren't going to like the forest rangers. But Tighnari does have a voice line where he says, if I ever met Lesser Lord Kusalani, I would wonder if she would explain to me the saying, plants and the land of Dendro share the same history, which he used to hear a lot. Nilou, surprisingly enough, is jealous that he'll never eat a poisonous mushroom.
Wait, what?
She's like jealous that he's smart enough to know to not eat like certain mushrooms, which is like I feel like Nilou is like openly admitting to like not being the brightest in that moment. Like,
yes, I'm sure you love that one.
Yeah, I do. But also, she's like, he'll never eat a poisonous mushroom. That's not fucking true. He's eating poisonous mushrooms on purpose, and we all know that. And I know I mentioned it earlier with Sethos, but Sethos, outside of thinking he's strong, thinks that Tighnari is very kind. And we find out, that Tighnari considers Sethos basically a distant cousin of Cyno's. And he's a very reliable guy. He knows a lot of skills. And so he's actually like invited him to Gandharvaville to meet Cyno's friends. Husband behavior, again.
Yeah.
Also, while Layla doesn't say anything about Tighnari, Tighnari has heard about Layla and how at night she, climbs the wall and all that jazz. And he's like, this shit is not real. So that's a little bit about like his relationships with everyone and like kind of his reputation around Sumeru. There is so much about him that is fun and interesting. The fact that he's made an oil for his tail that helps it be waterproof. He makes a joke about us becoming friends and needing to sign a friendship certificate. He's never met an Aranara, but he's happy they can protect themselves, unlike those quote-unquote stupid adventurers whose first thought when running into an Avidia leopard is, ooh, maybe I'll make an interspecies friendship today. It's clear that he's also selfless. He's in one of his birthday letters, he's written that he forgot about his birthday and he's running a workshop that day. And he also mentions wanting to go to Natlan to study all the flora there. So maybe we'll get a little moment with him. Outside of all of these things, the last thing I just want to mention is that he does have like a few issues. We've kind of talked about some of them. So, Tighnari's life is hard, obviously. His ears make things very hard. Everything is super loud, and that's why he's normally not a big fan of being in the city, and why he's not a fan of wind and thunder. It hurts his ears. Obviously, he does not do well in the heat. He has his whole line about it's so hot even a mist flower would melt. And then he gets logical and he's like, now that I think about it, it wouldn't, but you get what I mean. Now we like to headcanon that he's afraid of lightning. While that has never really been proven anywhere.
I think it's going to be his Peter Parker moment.
Oh, you think he's going to have lightning powers now?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Wow.
I know a lot of fanfic writers say that like will write really like good angsty pieces where Cyno and Tighnari's relationship becomes like a little hard after this because of Cyno being like an electro user. He has no cutscene, another issue in his life, and he can't eat spicy foods. He says it's really like a letdown because he lives in Sumeru and they have so much spice and he can't enjoy it. So, yeah.
So I have a question.
Okay.
If Cyno was not in the picture, who would you ship Tighnari with?
Albedo.
Okay, besides Albedo.
What? That's not fair. Honestly, Kaveh, a lot of people, okay, the Kaveh people are going to hate me. And I am 100% Kaveh Al-Haytham, guys. But Kaveh and Tighnari is a lot of fun. Tighnari has shown like a mothering side to Kaveh, and Kaveh has definitely shown like a loving side to Tighnari as friends. Mm-hmm. But like, of course, headcanons are headcanons. I definitely think that you could take those to the next level and they would make sense in like fan fictions and art. So maybe Kaveh would be my next bet.
Okay, I like that.
Tighnari hasn't really gotten to meet a lot of people outside of Sumeru, unfortunately. Besides in Mondstadt, and I'm definitely not shipping him with Mika. So You know,
Thank
I
you.
know a lot of people ship him with Kaniche. I've seen a lot of that. I think it's mostly like their colors. I think people think they're pretty together.
What about Goro?
No. Although I see it a lot.
Oh, really? You do?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Them like rubbing their tails together.
You could say that.
Oh.
There is a lot of Tighnari and Goru out there. And there's this one artist I follow where like they have it where like Cyno and Tighnari had a kid and Goru and Ito had a kid and their kids are dating. So,
that's cute.
Yeah, like we're halfway there. Yeah, I would say Cyno is top tier 100%, but if Cyno was not in the picture for some fucking reason, he never made it out of the Temple of Silence, it would be Albedo and then Kaveh.
Tiff. Anti-shipper.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it'd be nice if he was with Rana.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that is cute.
They really helped each other. Well, he really helped her. And now she got a vision, right? She's one of the only people we know that have a vision that we haven't seen.
R.I.P. someone else.
We only saw her before she had the vision.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cute.
I like that. Yeah, I don't know. Tighnari is just such a well-developed character. I mean, we literally talked for so long about him just now, and he has very built-out relationships with the people around him. You know, for the most part, they're not surface level. And they really show all these pieces of his personality no matter where he goes. Nothing is against something that they've shown prior, besides the sibling talk. For the most part, outside of that, he is like perfectly characterized, in my opinion. There's nothing that really falters.
Yeah, that's fair. Like he's very consistent as a character and well developed. So
yeah. So that being said, I could talk about Tighnari for like another 6 hours, but Kirara is over here. Like I've never met another eared person named Tighnari, and I need to get her out of here. So we're gonna jump to our mail segment. Thanks, Kirara. Our first message comes from Ash, and they said, going into the new year, do you each have a New Year's resolution for the podcast? Also, if you could choose one NPC, which one would it be, and what would their New Year's resolution be? So let's start with our New Year's resolutions for the podcast. What are you guys thinking?
Well, I think we've been discussing this a bit in the Discord. We've been talking about developing some different types of additional merch, and our sweatshirts and stuff were our first step. And my New Year's resolution is to get some of the things I've been planning on making for us done.
Brandon?
A Farina episode, so people will stop asking us.
By the end of 2025, there will be a Farina episode. For me, I've started looking into like some like smaller like tri-state conventions to maybe like do a tabling at. I think it'd be really fun, even if it was something very small. Like obviously, no Comic-Con tables, can't afford that. You know, but I think it'd be so fun to be able to go to like some of these smaller cons, even if it was just one of us, and sit at them. I know I have a friend who makes jewelry, and she's made me some beautiful Genshin themed earrings and stuff like that. So I've said to her, oh, maybe we could sell your earrings and I could promote the podcast. And so that's kind of like, that's what I'd like to do. Kind of get out there more, see people.
Cute.
Nice. Okay, so now you have to choose an NPC, and what would their New Year's resolution be?
Wagner.
Ooh, okay.
And his resolution is to stop being such a dick.
He's got to be nice.
Mine is Catherine. I want Catherine to get out from behind the desk.
Whoa. She did that in Sumeru and she almost died.
I know. She's probably shell-shocked from it now, too. But
that wasn't really her. She was possessed.
True, she was. She was possessed at the time.
Possessed by Nahida.
Yeah. But she needs like a day off, like Catherine's day off in the city. She just travels around, eats different foods. talks about rebooting.
I love that.
I don't like the rebooting part.
Well, she's a robot. She's got a key in the back of her head.
That's true. I always feel like I pronounce this wrong. So if I'm pronouncing it wrong, let me know. But my New Year's resolutions would be actually for 2 NPCs, and it would be for Timaeus and Yinger. And it'd be for them to get engaged or go on a date. Like, I want to see more of the two of them together because we know that they are dating. So that is Timaeus, who is the alchemy assistant in Mondstadt, and of course his girlfriend, the OG perfume lady in Liyue.
That's cute.
Thank you, Ash, for your question. Happy New Year. I know it's not our first
Ash.
New Year episode, but we like the question. Our next message comes from Ad, and they said, if you felt inspired to take on some wardrobe tips from a Genshin character, who would it be and why? Ad said that for them, they would let Yoon Jin dress them up any day of the week, hands down, since she's all about practical use of layers. They also said if you could incorporate any Genshin character's hairstyle as your own, what would it be? It could be color, hair, length, whatever.
I mean, I'd love myself some Muika hair. That, like, all glowy and flowy and long and luxurious. Yeah, so I think I think I would go with probably, yeah, I like Muika's hair. I really do. Jingling's is also very cute to me too. But I think when it comes to like outfit wise, you know, I love the goth girls, and my wardrobe's already half black anyway. So, you know, I think I'd go with like Fischl or Sarah or Auroran. I probably already own Auroran's clothes. He's a little emo boy.
You got the cabbages to match?
Yeah.
What about you, B?
I don't know. I think for hair, I mean, I could go with anyone because I'm bald, but I kind of like Beyonce's hair.
Ooh, okay.
It's like giving very like sort of butch lesbian in the front, but then has like these really long, you know, ponytails in the back.
Yeah, I do like it a lot. It's very pretty. I like the color too.
Yeah. So I like that. For outfit, that's the one I'm like, I don't really know. I guess I'll go with my husband Toma so I can dress him up and, you know, undress
Are you
him.
gonna wear like matching outfits?
Oh no,
matching PJs.
We don't do that. We're like Tighnari, we're independent women.
So I'm gonna start with outfits because that's, I think, easier for me. I would love to have the new Hu Tao skin IRL. It's so cute. It's so fun. I like the glasses and everything like that. Otherwise, it's hard for me because, like, I don't know, a lot of these characters dress like really extravagant, and I just don't do that. The fanciest I get anymore is like pretending to be Willow from Buffy. So that being said, when it comes to hair, I have issues. So I've actually had Gam Ming's hair before, prior to Gam Ming ever being a thing. I have had his exact haircut and hair color, and I would do it again. Honestly, seeing Gam Ming made me want to do like the red undercut again. I haven't, but definitely would love to. And for a brief stint in my life, I was blonde, and I literally brought in a picture of Albedo and showed it to my hairstylist and said, this is the color I want to be. And I have short hair like Albedo does, but I have a full bang. So I definitely tried to be the Albedo hair look. But yeah, like I would go, I'm not going back to blonde. It was too much work and it kind of washed me out. But I would definitely go back to like the Gam Ming hairstyle for sure. But I've had like so many hair colors. Like if you look back through our like recording photos, I was still blonde when we started the podcast. And when I started growing out the blonde, I was dyeing it fun colors. So I had pink hair. I had blue hair. I've had red hair. I've had a red balayage before. I've had a blue balayage before. I've had full red hair. So I'm not really like afraid of changing my hair. And if I had to pick someone new, I would pick Tighnari. I like the money piece.
You've already done that, though.
Well, that was a wig.
You had a wig. Now, Fiends wore a Tighnari wig that looked so perfect on her that she met one of my friends that day, who's now one of her friends, and she thought it was a real hair.
She did. When I saw her again, she asked me what happened. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, you had like blue and green hair. And I was like, what? I was like, oh, that was a wig. I don't got that fly of a bob.
But it looks so perfect.
Thank you. That was an Amazon wig, 10 out of 10 from Amazon. But yeah, I do think that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening to me talk so much about this boy. I thank Tiff and Brandon. I thank all travelers. I hope that, for people who maybe didn't enjoy him, that you enjoy him now. I hope for people who love him, we did him justice because it feels good to me. If you like this episode or I missed something, you can email us at talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com to let us know your thoughts or to let us know what topics you'd like to see in the future. Additionally, you can follow us on Instagram, Tales of Teyvat Pod, or on Twitter, Tales of Teyvat. We're additionally on Blue Sky and Threads as Tales of Teyvat. You can also follow us on YouTube, where we do have some fun animations. Our Jeopardy episode has a more fun and engaging video there too. That is youtube.com/@, because it's weird, Tales of Teyvat. And you can check out our Ko-fi, where you can buy us a cup of coffee or Diet Pepsi, or get yourself some cool Tales of Teyvat merch. And like Tiff mentioned, that we're hopefully going to have some new stuff popping up in there soon. So definitely check it out. Next week, I will be sad because not only are we not talking about Tighnari, but we're talking about a character that I don't really like.
That you will love at the end of this episode.
Sure. Join us next week as we discuss the new knave, Arlecchino.
Woohoo!
Till then, safe journeys, travelers. We'll see you next time.
Bye, botanical nerds.